Today I'll be breaking down the details behind Smash DI on a box versus Smash DI on a Gamecube controller. Smash DI is a mechanic which raises plenty of concerns due to its exploitative nature, and so it'll be good for the community to know exactly how it works on each of these two controllers. In TAS gameplay, it's possible to Smash DI very far across the stage within a hit lag window. While this is nowhere near possible on either the Gamecube controller or box, there are still differences between these controllers that are important to know about. The Melee community has recently taken an interest in the Smash DI discussion due to the box's increasing popularity, and so it's about time for a detailed breakdown to exist. This video will also lead into more videos that I'll eventually do as part of a box legality series. For now, the topic of Smash DI is a good starting point. It's no secret that digital inputs are theoretically better than an analog stick when it comes to Smash DI if certain limits aren't placed on them, and so I'll start by listing what those limits are on the box. The first limit has to do with the box's basic analog stick programming. The box's cardinal directions utilize a system called override, which states that a newly input cardinal will take priority if the opposite direction was held. This is perfectly fine from a legality perspective. However, what needs to be enforced is the inability for cardinal directions to reactivate once the opposite direction is released. For example, releasing east should not be able to reactivate west. This is a necessary rule for plenty of reasons, and minimizing SDI is one of them. The next limitation is a must as well. There's a nerf I came up with for the box that wasn't previously enforced on keyboards that were used to play Melee. This nerf states that when a quarter circle input is performed, the correct direction to go to next for SDI is banned for 4 frames. To be clear, banned means that the input won't go through at all. The purpose of this nerf is to limit quarter circle SDI, which is the go-to method for SDI on the Gamecube controller as well as the box. With an analog stick, your thumb will recoil after a quarter circle is used to perform 2 SDI inputs, making it impossible to perform a third SDI with another quarter circle. With a keyboard, however, you'd normally be able to quarter circle to the next direction with ease. The box's SDI nerf limits the number of quarter circles that can be performed to 1, which is in line with the Gamecube controller. As for why the lockout lasts for 4 frames, this has to do with the number of hit lag frames you'll typically encounter. Most hit lag windows in Melee last for 7 frames or less. From there, it's impossible to SDI on the first frame of hit lag, which means that most SDI windows last for 6 frames. If a quarter circle is performed on the first 2 frames of an SDI window, then the box's nerf will kick in and ban SDI inputs on the 4 remaining frames. If a move deals 15% or more, then it'll be theoretically possible to SDI 3 times on the box. However, the 4-frame lockout makes this unlikely to the point that it's not a concern. If you are faced with a 7-frame SDI window, for example, then you need 3 frame-perfect inputs for this to happen, and so the box's lockout is more than enough to cover this situation. Another reason I went with a 4-frame lockout is because 4 frames is exactly how much pivot down tilt needs to be locked out by, and so it's nice to be able to keep the SDI lockout in line with this number. Despite the fact that the Gamecube controller and box are both limited to 2 SDI inputs via the quarter circle method, there are still differences between these controllers. I'll start by showing the coordinates that are eligible for SDI. As you can see, SDI can't occur until your analog stick makes it somewhat close to the rim. The box is at an advantage when the first SDI input is performed due to a mechanic called polling. Polling is an uncontrollable aspect of video games which causes your inputs to be read rapidly as you play. Because the box skips directly to the value of 1.0, its first SDI will always be polled in this value. The Gamecube controller, on the other hand, can be polled as early as 0.7. SDI then multiplies your analog stick coordinates by 6. This means that the box's initial SDI input is guaranteed to travel 6 units, whereas the Gamecube controller will travel between 4.2 and 6 units. The next aspect of quarter circle SDI to discuss is the second SDI input. The Gamecube controller has an advantage here in that it will always be polled right as you enter the quadrant, which causes it to have a strong value in the desired direction. To be exact, the best possible value you can receive is 0.95. The box, on the other hand, will always receive a value of 0.7 in the desired direction. This means that the box is guaranteed to have a second SDI input of 4.2 units, whereas the Gamecube controller will have between 4.2 and 5.7 units. The other aspect of the second SDI input to discuss is its timing. The box is at a timing advantage over the Gamecube controller due to the fact that it's easy to piano 2 SDI inputs on frame 1, then frame 2 with enough practice. I've tested the Gamecube controller extensively and found that it typically performs its SDI inputs on frame 1, then frame 4, which means it's at a disadvantage. This disadvantage comes into play when your first SDI input occurs toward the end of a hit lag window. The box is more likely to be able to squeeze in a second SDI input when this happens. The box is also at the advantage of being able to SDI twice within very small hit lag windows. The most notable one in competitive play is Fox's first hit of up air, which causes 4 hit lag frames. Since the SDI window given here lasts 3 frames, only the box can realistically SDI twice. To summarize quarter circle SDI, each controller possesses a polling advantage over the other. The box is at an advantage on the first SDI input, whereas the Gamecube controller is at an advantage on the second. In terms of distance traveled, these two inputs roughly cancel each other out. However, it's better to have the advantage on the first SDI input, and so the box wins in this department. The box also wins in terms of being able to SDI on frame 1 followed by frame 2, whereas the Gamecube controller's second SDI usually kicks in on frame 4. All in all, the box is unquestionably better than the Gamecube controller at quarter circle SDI. That leads us to the question of whether or not there are solutions. A solution that's been suggested is programming the box to have macro-style behavior on its cardinal inputs. This would mean an input of 0.8 followed by 1.0 on the next frame. While macroed cardinals would bring the box's first SDI input more in line with the Gamecube controllers, they aren't viable for other reasons. Ledge dashing is the best example. The box's ledge dashing capabilities were designed around it being able to input a value of 1.0 for certain characters' jump trajectory. Fox, for example, needs a jump trajectory of 1.0 to be paired with the box's shallowest air dodge angle in order for his frame 6 ledge dash to succeed. If Fox's jump trajectory is reduced to 0.8, then his frame 6 ledge dash won't work, and so macroed cardinals would be an overnerf just for the fact that they'd compromise this situation alone. I'm also opposed to macroed cardinals simply because I believe macros should be limited to timing lockouts such as the SDI lockout that I mentioned earlier. Introducing macros for inputs that are actually read would cause the box to enter territory that I'd rather stay away from. Fortunately, I do have a solution to the SDI disparity between the Gamecube controller and box. However, I won't be going over it within this video. I've planned out at least 2 more videos that'll be part of a series I do on box legality, and so I encourage the community to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that people can learn more about my solution when the time comes. For now, I'll be wrapping up this video by explaining other SDI methods. These are much less important than quarter circle SDI, however, they're still worth mentioning. The first SDI method I'll be covering is the double tap method on box, which is more of a myth than an actual SDI method. I say this because the double tap method is mostly useless and doesn't raise any actual concerns, but not everyone is aware of that. People often bring up the double tap SDI method because it is in fact the only way to SDI 3 times within hit lag windows of 7 or less on the box. However, this is more of a theoretical concern rather than something that would ever actually happen. The double tap exploit would work by inputting a cardinal direction, then double tapping the same cardinal and quarter circling. The reason this is nearly impossible in practice is because a quick double tap performs inputs on roughly frame 1 then frame 7, which is already outside the bounds of the SDI windows you'll usually see. From there, the quarter circle that comes after would take until even later. For these reasons, I view double tap SDI as more of a myth rather than an actual concern, and I think that's a fine train of thought to have until proven otherwise. Finally, the Gamecube controller has an alternative SDI method worth mentioning. This one is called Wank SDI. Wank SDI originated in Smash 64, which is probably where Wizrobe got it from. Wizrobe is known for being the only top melee player who takes advantage of Wank SDI, which is the only way to input 3 SDI or more within your average hit lag window. Wank SDI is performed by situating the analog stick against the rim and pulsating the entire controller against it with your other hand. While this technique is worth learning, I'll be honest in telling you that the box's SDI capabilities are still better than the Gamecube controllers overall. This is due to the quarter circle SDI advantage we went over earlier. As I said though, I have a solution in mind that I've yet to see anyone in the community suggest, and so I encourage people to stay tuned to my channel. The next video within this series is tentatively scheduled for this Friday, so I'll see you all then.